We'll start in the next 2 minutes. Please, if you're still outside, kindly come back in. So this presentation, the next will be a presentation by Tamon. He will be telling us about enabling local internet innovation with IPv6. Immediately after Tamon's presentation, we'll have another panel. They will be discussing real value of internet beyond viral videos and misinformation. Is there any real value? All right. At the end of that, we'll be talking about the 5G and IoT. What's in it for service providers? And then we'll be going deeper. So please, if you're still having your lunch, kindly finish and join us. In the next 2 minutes, we'll commence with the presentation with Tamon. Thank you very much. What I'm about? All right. Welcome back. I'm sure it's not. You guys will be wondering, is it every time we say we'll come back and we'll come back? So let's try to keep the time now. I promise that we'll come back in 2 minutes' time. We're already back. So the next presentation will be taken by Tamon Mukon from AfriNIC. We'll be talking to us about enabling local internet innovation with IPv6. Like we usually say, immediately after lunch, you know what happens. Please try as much as possible not to sleep off. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Tamon as he comes up on the stage?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I want to talk about innovation. That's a word that we've heard several times since yesterday. We must innovate, right? That's the way to solve our problems. Give me a second, let me change my. How many of you have used a Kodak product in the last 90 days? Anyone? Hands up. If you've used a Kodak product in the last 90 days. Of course, the silence is predictable. I already know the answer. No one. But do you know that digital photography was actually discovered by Kodak? And yet today, and to know how important this was, Kodak, like Google, made its way into the English language, a Kodak moment. And yet today, almost 180 million photos are uploaded to the internet. And the people who discovered it testing. Good. Testing. Good. Good. Thank you. So, the Kodak moment is being captured by different organizations. So, those are the brands. When we talk about digital photography today, those are the brands that we know about. Number one is Canon. Number two is Nikon, Sony, Olympus, and Pentax. Now, I created this chart like 2 years ago. If you were to analyze the photographs being taken on the internet today, I'm pretty sure you see Samsung, LG, Apple as number one, and not even these guys. That's just to tell you that what? The field keeps changing. The goal keeps changing. So, we've heard a lot about innovation. But what exactly is innovation? Because if you're going to talk about innovating our way out of something, we need to be clear about what innovation is. So, all of these things, these are the things we like to think are innovation. None of them is innovation. It's not about creativity. It's not about ideas. I often hear people say, you know what, they stole my ideas. Sorry, honey, ideas are a dime a dozen. But okay, it's the execution of an idea that is worth it. It's not about R&D. We often confuse innovation with R&D. So what is innovation? It's an idea that does two things. It generates value for a customer and the business. If an idea, well executed, cannot generate value for a customer and the business, then it's not innovation. Call it whatever it is not innovation. So mark those two: customer value and business value. Now, challenge when it comes to innovating is this. Most organizations, especially established big organizations, they're in a mode that we're calling exploiting the current business model. They've found something that brings in money, and every executive from the CEO to the frontline staff is focused on executing on that business model. So execution, that's the focus. Now, that's very different from the kind of mindset you need to innovate, which is what? Search. When you're trying to innovate, you must start with the premise that I am going to fail and fail. And failure becomes a spring part for learning. And how will I know that I'm ready to start exploiting or executing? I can prove that there's value generated for the customer. And then I can build a business around that to create value or to capture that value for the organization. So that is the number one challenge when it comes to executing. And one of the stories I like to tell to illustrate the importance, how difficult this can be, is that sometimes just asking the right question can be very crucial. During World War II, the US Army, they had a problem. The vast majority, there was a really large number of fighter pilots that were going over the Nazi-occupied territory, and they were getting shot down. And so the army thought, of course the obvious answer to protect our airplanes is to put armoring. But here's the problem, design challenge. If you armor the entire plane, it becomes heavier, therefore reducing how far out it could go. So the question was, let's armor just the most vulnerable parts of the plane. So what they did was that every single time a plane came back from the battlefront, they would mark the points in the plane where there were bullet holes. After they thought they gathered enough data, a couple of generals sat in the room and said, okay, fine. Based upon these photos, this data, which locations of the plane should we put armoring on? And all the generals said, you know what, hey, see the wings, that's where we should armor. But then, a Hungarian mathematician called Abraham Walk came into the room. He was a consultant for the DoD. And he said, no, the place that you should armor is where there are no bullet holes. Because the data that you're looking at is telling you something from what you think it is. Because here's the thinking. Each of these planes that you are seeing made it back here after flying over Germany. So that's not the problem. The ones that were vulnerable, the way you don't see bullet holes, those that were shot there, they're the ones that fell in Germany. So that data is not here. So if you want to innovate, you have to start asking the right questions. And it starts with, are you trying to solve? I always ask, say, is it a $5 question we are trying to solve? Or is it a $5 billion question we are trying to solve? If you're thinking in the terms of consumers, you're trying to solve a completely different problem from someone who's thinking as a producer. Okay? And so, for big companies that are already making money from the status quo, for them to innovate, is asking them to almost do the impossible. Elephants don't fly. Okay? So, how do we get out of this conundrum? We have to look at that three important things that determine whether a company is going to be innovative. Its resources, its processes, and its values. Those three determine its capabilities. First thing, if you've got an idea of how you could innovate, it could end up in one of these three things. It could be drama. You all know, sticky notes around your companies. The CEO is talking about innovation, but no one is actually doing innovation. But whether it ends up being true innovation depends upon those three things. Do you have the resources? And in the case of IP, once you go high enough the value chain, you realize that having enough IP addresses, which is only IPv6, is one of the resources that you're going to need. Of course, part of it is time. Part of it is what management attention. The other one is processes. There needs to be a predictable process, and key part of this process is to recognize that part of innovation is failing. So if you start looking for traditional business case, you're already going to kill innovation. Because when you're trying to innovate, and you're looking for a traditional business case from your accountants, the very first time you fail, they say, shut down this project. It's not going to bring in value. And then the values is that, what do we value as a company? So I'll ask this question. If I ask you of all of these organizations, which one of them is most creative? I didn't say innovative. Which one of them is most creative? How many people think Apple? Hands up. How many people think Microsoft? No one thinks Microsoft. How many people think Xerox? How many people have even heard about Xerox? Shocker. Xerox is one of the most creative companies that we had. But again, they had a Kodak problem, right? Because almost everything from the mouse, the GUI that we have today was created by Xerox. But again, like Kodak, they did not have the values and the processes to transform those ideas into innovations. And so today, every single one of us, we know Xerox as a photocopier machine. Guys who make photocopiers, let's go and Xerox something. What if Xerox had chosen not to see itself as a photocopier company? So the question I'm going to ask for every one of us, and that's going to frame the lightning discussions, is, what assumptions do we make about who we are as companies, as countries, as a continent, are holding us back from innovating for the future? Questions and comments? Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
All right, questions for Tamon, please. Any question? Thanks, Tamon, for that beautiful presentation. Another round of applause to Tamon, please.
Thank you.
Any questions for Tamon?
Hi.
All right, so before the next panelist, any question? All right, thank you. So we'll have 5 minutes of networking amongst yourselves, then the next panelist will come up to discuss.
Hello.
So we just
All right, welcome back. So we're going to be having a panel discussion, and the discussion will center on real value of the internet beyond viral videos and misinformation. To be on this panel is Professor M.B. Muazu from ABU Zaria. We also have Ina Beggington from Netflix. We have Mr. Nwanze Okonkwo from DBI. We have Mr. Adewale Ajao from Bandwidth Consortium. We have Mr. Komi Adewara from OAU Zaria. Actually, Dr. Adewara from OAU. Sorry, from OAU Ife. Thank you. And then Cletus Okoli, I'll be moderating this panel. All right. Okay. So as already stated, what we'll be discussing, or what the panelists will be discussing, is to tell us real value of the internet beyond viral videos and misinformation. There's a lot of fake news. There are lots and lots of videos. Are they actually conveying the information? Is government going to stifle that at the expense of the money or the value that this is supposed to bring? So this panelist will be telling us about it. So I'll give them 3 minutes each. First, tell us about yourself, and then a bit about what you understand in this topic. So I'll start with Professor Muazu, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm M.B. Muazu from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, from Department of Computer Engineering, and incidentally also the Director of ICT for the university. So I think my take on this is going to be more focused on internet and the academia. Yes, but then I think it's very important to put into perspective what exactly is, what a lot of people do with the internet today, even in the academia, talk less of the entire society. And listening to earlier discussions, and especially when somebody talked about the national broadband plan and the target of a penetration of 30% and a bandwidth speed of 1.5 Mbps. And then I think somebody also alluded to the fact that most Nigerians do not really bother about those targets, especially the fact that the broadband plan suggests that we should have a mobile penetration of 1.5 Mbps, simply for the fact that most of us, once we can get internet access to be able to tweet or to do Facebook or to do things like that, it suffices for our needs. And so that's why people are not really bothered about those targets per se, because that's all we really do with the internet. But even if we're focusing on social media applications for internet, there's a lot of value that could have been obtained from the use of internet for those functions. But unfortunately, most people do not even understand the business value in social media and capitalize on it. You see only a very few people do that. But then coming to the academia, the way things are moving now, there's a lot that has to be based on the strength of the internet that you have for you to be able to do things. And so, for instance, now, everybody is talking of AI, big data and all this, because these are the engines that will drive Internet of Things. And this is where we're supposed to be focusing the value system for the internet on now. But unfortunately, even in the academia, that's not what we're necessarily involved in. For instance, you could have whatever, in my school, for instance, we have like 6 STM1. It may not sound very big for some people, but in any Nigerian university system, that is pretty a substantial amount of bandwidth. But then we ask ourselves, if we do a traffic analysis, we'll see that a lot of it is not actually used for any value generating exercise. And the few people that will need it for real academic purpose will have challenges, because a lot of people are busy streaming wrestling, streaming channel news, and so on and so forth. And then you have limited bandwidth available for people to do real academic work. Now, a lot of people have to, maybe if you have to do AI-related things, or big data, or cloud computing, most often than not, you need to use your internet access, because you need to access things like the Google Cloud or Amazon and so on and so forth. So you see, this is where we actually are not taking the opportunity of what we have to maximize the value of the internet, to achieve what are the possibilities that can be achieved with the internet. Thank you.
Nina?
Yeah, so I am Nina. I work for Netflix. And I'm on this panel mostly to tell stories about how internet penetration, that in my country is above 95%, and how the internet service in that way is affecting my day-to-day life. So an example is my eldest child is old enough that she might call me one day and say, hey, you're going to be a grandma. And when the time comes when they want to return to work and they need to have that potential grandchild taken care of and put into daycare, the way that happens is that they would go online with their virtual ID and say, I have this child, is this old, I need daycare, and I'd select which daycare they would like the child to come into. And a couple of days later, they would get a message in their official box saying, you have a spot on this day, or we're sorry, you have to go to this daycare with your child. No lines, they don't have to take time off, it's all done online. So even though I see a big driver from entertainment to roll out, and that could be creating a need, the fact that when the most of your population is online at some point, there's a lot of things that can be made easier and cheaper for everybody to get done.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mwanza Kumpo from Digital Bridge Institute, and I'm the head of ICT. Of course, there is value for internet, and it has a lot of huge value potentials. But however, my take is this. The internet means different things for different people. For the scholars, it could be a vast repository of information. Okay, so a social-minded person, it could just be a means to interact with friends and family. But my own angle is really that the critical value of internet is openness. Openness in the sense that anything you put out in the internet is there for everybody to see. And consequently, if it is factual, if it's true, people will hold you accountable to it. And so to me, that's the real value of internet.
Okay, thank you. My name is Komi Adewara. I'm with the University, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ileife. What is the impact of the internet? I see the internet as a tool to drive innovation. And I think that is so much underutilized so much these days, particularly for our young people. Yesterday, we were talking about the adoption of IPv6. And one of the key things that somebody mentioned was that to a very large extent in Nigeria, we are consumers. We don't create and generate content. And I see the internet as a tool to help our young people to come up with creative ideas and to put it out. And I think that once we can get enough of that content that is original, that is localized, then we can actually drive a lot of traffic. We've been talking about challenges with the NG domain, exchange point local traffic. One of the ways that we can drive that is allowing our young people to take the tool, the internet as a tool, and use it to drive innovation and creativity. There's a lot. And I think the internet provides a level playing ground for everybody. So I'm looking at the internet causing that revolution, as it were, going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wole?
Thank you, Cletus. My name is Dewole Ajao. I work with the Bandwidth Consortium. I also happen to work on the ngNOG related activities, and I'm the president of the Internet Society Nigeria chapter. So I'll take it from the angle of the Internet Society, going up from what you said about openness and innovation. We like to say at the Internet Society that the Internet enables permissionless innovation. That means you don't need to ask anybody before you can do something. I was given an example earlier that right here in Lagos today, and it's happening in many cities, there are several businesses that don't have physical storefronts. There are hotels that don't have signboards, but they are fully booked day in, day out. Now that's the type of value that we see the internet provide. There are concerns, there are challenges that people see, because when that openness starts, where do you control it? Especially people whose job it is to control. And I think that with everything, not just it shouldn't be control, but it should be seeking to understand and also be understood. And I'd like to see a scenario where people from the security services, for example, play an active role in engagements like this to see, okay, these are the good things that you can get from the internet, and then express themselves that, oh, these are our challenges, and how do you think we can solve things like that. Komi, you mentioned creating content. We don't create content. I'd like to disagree with you on that. We do a lot of content creation, but I think we might just not be conscious enough that these things that we have, we can use the technology to propagate it beyond where it is. And it might mean discovering that informal channels are really easy to use. It might also mean that now there are obviously some reasons why those or that type of content that is being created, why it's not getting out there. It could be that payment systems are not working well enough, so it becomes a challenge, and when somebody tries to pay you via the electronic means, it fails and starts another line of hassles, and then you think, oh no, I don't want to use this internet means. That might mean that there's work for us to do as operators of these services.
Right, so from your different contributions, I see internet has given us some value, but I would also like to ask, do you think that the impact of these values we've gotten, how will you describe it in terms of commerce, education, in health, and in security? Komi, do you have anything to say on that?
Okay, thank you. There's one other sector that you didn't mention, but I think it's inferred, the impact of internet on governance. So I was talking with a group of people recently, and I asked them a question. What would happen if we turned off the internet for 5 minutes? You know, I mean, let's just imagine what would happen. And until we play that scenario in our minds, perhaps we'll not fully appreciate the value of the internet. So there were 3 responses to that statement. The first was that somebody said there will be chaos and anarchy, you know, things like not being able to pay for things, not being able to get a ride by Uber, not being able to do basic things. The second thing that somebody said was that life goes on for some people, you know. Some people, they are not yet feeling the impact of the internet. Now, there's a third category of people, and that is some people that will feel relief. Now, who are those categories? Which category is that? Funny to say, it may be the category of people that are perhaps in governance, because one of the things that the internet helps us to do is to keep people accountable. So, I mean, something happens, you are driving on the road, you see a policeman manhandling somebody, you're able to take a snapshot, it's uploaded. The next time somebody watches that, he's a bit careful how he treats the common man on the street. The person, the politician that is supposed to give the annual report, he says something, okay, sorry, let me pick something. In the last Russian meeting in Russia, there were some pictures of some leaders that were perhaps not very attentive. How many of us saw that? I'm not going to mention names. But the next thing that happened was that the next meeting, all the leaders were wide awake. You know, because some people were saying that some people were just going there for jamboree. So it keeps our leaders accountable. So I see that's one of the major things I love about the internet going forward. Granted, there's room for a lot of abuse, but I see the positive there, that it keeps governance accountable. And I think that's very, very good going forward.
Also, when you look at the internet as one of the values, we're also seeing, I know government has a lot of security controls. So what do you think? Do you think that government sees the real value in some of those things they are stopping? For example, think about Uber. How much money they're making? If our government will also look in that sense, do you think that government have also benefited, or what they're trying to create is hampering the growth or the real value that we should get as internet? Do you have anything to say on that?
Well, let's see. So without going into specifics of which particular app or which service, my thoughts on government's appreciation is if people were really interested in getting services working more efficiently, I think the government would look at taking different services online. But I think like those of us who volunteer with civil society related organizations, we have some more work to do to help the people who are in government appreciate that value. So for example, for elections now, when the next round of voter registrations would happen, I would have to leave, using the current system, I would have to leave my office for several hours, and it's very possible that I would go today and I would not get properly captured and registered, and I would go tomorrow again. So where we need citizens to be active, or where citizens even have things to do, Nina will probably share about her experiences, where she comes from, on how you can sit down on the internet and access an array of services, whether they are government services or private services. If we're in government and we're really interested in improving the quality of life and making things easy for people rather than more, okay, somebody will talk about governance rather than government. Mukom was saying yesterday, oh, we want governance, but we don't want a government. But the reality is the government is there. And so maybe if they were to put more services online and make life easy for people, then the efforts that anybody else is making will be better appreciated.
So Nina, looking at from the part of the world where you were from, and then with what happens in Nigeria, do you think that we have really taken the value that we should get from internet compared to your own environment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay, I'm saying that from where you're coming from, looking at the real value you've gotten from the use of internet, do you think Nigeria have also benefited, or have we used it the way you've used at your own end?
Well, I think a lot of the services that I benefit from, which is, and by the way, I didn't mention that before, the daycare example is actually public, because the public is controlling who gets into which daycare, because we have a guarantee of having children taken care of. But the benefit there is, and that can be done by providing services on the internet, it does require that the majority have access to those services. So when a government bills, and we want everybody on the internet program, which was done in Denmark as well. It was with the longer term view that this is a way we can provide services to our citizens. So our citizens do not have to show up in offices and stand in long lines and have discussions face-to-face with officials who may or may not be in a good mood that day, but move it into a rational environment online. So we do taxes, daycare, sometimes you can do even medical consultations to your doctor directly using this virtual secure ID that everything revolves around.
So from the users, I don't know, do we have any question for our panelists? Any question, any contribution you want to make as regards what we're discussing? Yes, okay. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, all. Standing on the existing protocols of the panel, I'm really happy colleague got me here. I'm Michael Liche. I'm the CEO of VV Security Solutions. I'm actually an IT and a mobile telecoms person, a 2G, 3G, 4G RF consultant, and an IEU. Where I'm actually heading to, I got interested, I don't know his name specifically, when he talked about the internet being a pathway for driving content, because I came up with some content. And where I have problems, it's with the government not actually using the legal aspects to actually monetize contents in this country. Because we've taken different content to government parastatals, private parastatals, and at the end, you end up losing the patency of your content because different people start coming up. We came up with a content for security, came up with a content. So what I want to ask is this: can this forum be the pathfinder we're looking for to empower how do I put it, educate or let the government know that there is a role the legal aspect play to actually make some content, even if we're not earning from the content, we can give the content to the government and as an IGR and retain a percentage from it. That's the problem we who give contents out have been having. And they tell you, I think the last time I had an interface, we are trying to actually do what we call cyber warfare. So we're actually looking at the military sphere, how we actually touch them. So part of the first phase of the project is making the low-end users like Tricycle, bringing them to cyber, forcing them to use what you call modern-day Uber. So from there, we now introduce the next part of the solution, which is the law enforcement agent. But the problem is they are not ready for the content. So if there are pathfinders like this, it will actually help us who bring in contents have a faster leeway. I don't know.
What's the question now?
The question is this.
It's about content.
The question is, a platform like this can help educate the government to actually take a proper legal arm of the internet so that it can people who have content can find a leeway of partnering with the government. That's actually challenging.
So in addition to that, do you think government decision have also affected the real benefit that people get from the internet? Right?
Okay, part of the question was kind of like the role of government in content creation or something like that. Now, so I'll try and rephrase maybe what I was trying to say earlier. One of the things that has been going on in some spaces where I've been is how much of the decisions that we make is data driven in Nigeria. You know, I think that's one gap that many times we don't take notice of. For example, we have a telco. One of the things that should happen is that, for example, those of us that are in the university, we should work with maybe the telcos and ask, okay, how much of the content that people access, you know, is content that is from Nigeria? I will not put you on the spot with that question. But I'm tempted to think that the percentage of that content is not so high. That is content within Nigeria. And I'll give you an example. It seems like it's content in Nigeria, but it doesn't seem to originate from Nigeria. My example is the last Big Brother Africa event. Now, how many of us know how many people voted on Big Brother? Estimated 240 million. And it was it's assumed that each vote cost how much? 30 naira. And that's where the 7.2 billion naira came up from. So people said 7.2 billion naira was generated in 100 days or 99 days. Now, can you imagine if that content was original content from Nigeria and what that 7.2 billion could have done? So what I would love to see happen, so part of addressing your question, I don't think the government is doing anything per se to discourage development of content. I think what needs to happen is for maybe spaces like this to find ways of building capacity in learning how to develop the kind of content that people want to view, watch, and want to consume. So part of that is a move that is, for example, there are services now. So if you want to deploy a service in health or in commerce, maybe some people will say that one of the limiting factors is because it's not in local vernacular. So if a local person that doesn't speak English, can we convert complicated service requirements to local vernacular, you know, such that the common man on the street can consume that service? I think the capacity building in the content creation space needs some support. I'm not sure exactly how that is going to happen, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Right. Any other contribution from you?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I think, you know, maybe just like as happened earlier on, I think there's too much thinking that government has to direct things that happens even in the IT ecosystem. I think to a large extent, there's even too much leeway for people to be able to do a lot of things in that ecosystem. So if it's in terms of maybe regulations and things like that, we have all those structures on the ground. And I'm not really sure that maybe the government tries to restrict anybody from developing content or whatever. If that was the case, these figures Komi was talking about will have not, okay, because there were a lot of issues as to people encouraging government to stop the Big Brother whatever because for whatever reasons. So, but sometimes maybe we'll go back to what even Tamon talked about. We need to be able to innovate these things. Nobody thought about the Big Brother concept until DSTV came with it. And so you have a lot of things like that. But now look at, for instance, maybe Netflix. Netflix coming to Nigeria, for instance, is now saying, let's have some local content. Because maybe it's also going to drive the market. Probably they've looked at the multi-choice concept. See when they started with Africa Magic, for instance, it was mostly English content. But then you now realize you had a large, maybe Hausa movie watching, a large Yoruba movie, and then people are encouraged to develop those content. All of a sudden, the Igbos said, we're also, so you see, if everything is on the ground, but people need to innovate. People need to find ways of taking advantage of the opportunities that exist to create value out of what is already on the ground. But we can't continue looking at government. If we're looking at government to do this, we are actually watching as government is leaving us to create a situation that, if not properly handled in the next few years, is going to be a very, very serious problem for us. And that is about secured identity. Because now, I think somebody had mentioned it earlier on, you have immigration taking all your biometrics, you have road safety taking all your biometrics, you have the passport office, you have, everybody is taking, all the GSM companies are taking all your biometrics. And really, there's nobody at this point in time that can tell you what is the actual state of those data they collect. And then this, we're encouraging openness of the internet. We're not bothered about security of some of these. The time we get so sophisticated, some of this biometric information about people is already in the internet, and there's nobody that has control over them, and then we're going to start to see real problems of identity theft, because now we have so much people's biometrics all over the place. There's no reason why NIMSI will not collect all your data, and whoever needs your biometrics, if I have to go and do passport, I don't need to go to immigration for them to get my biometrics, because those things are already there. But every time, even if you are going to renew, you have to go and yet again, just like Deole said, very soon maybe another round of voter registration. Why do you have to go and maybe re-register or update whatever? Because almost 10 years ago, they've captured all your biometrics. But then we keep on and on and on. So in as much as we encourage this openness, but we should also be wary of allowing government alone to take the lead or to decide what happens. Because somehow, it's not really working. Yeah.
We're hoping that apart from the voter registration, we'll also be allowed to vote electronically and take the advantage of what the internet brings to. All right.
Yeah. Okay, let me lend my voice to this too. Whether we like it or not, everybody's saying that government have no business in business, right? And so we're trying to tell government to leave this business, and yet we want them to come into the internet. And the internet is that one place where the citizens who become celebrity overnight, right? Somebody who does not have the wherewithal to publish any kind of content could become a blogger and attract wide followership all over the world. You do not need government in that space. But relating it to what the gentleman said, government is also a consumer of content, right? The same way people move into government agencies, they want to offer services. In the same way, you can offer services to governments, and so they consume it. At the same time, they also try to use the internet to drive their own services to the population. So in other way, they both consume and they both provide content. But however, whether or not government accepts whatever platform or service you want to sell to them determine whether it actually meets their purpose. If it doesn't, they will not. And that is also what I will do if you want to sell anything to me that I don't want. Now, it is still not true for anybody to think that government do not use the internet very well. A case in point is this. The elections we'll be having over the years, some government agencies have used the internet to track the progress, the issues. The security agencies have used the internet to do what they call the early warning system. I happen to be a member of a project that built a platform that was used to track the transparency of the Nigerian election from the processes down to the logistics, even to the results transmission. And government agencies keyed into it. And so they've been using that. But the question is, what value they derive from it? Okay? And that is what this panel is all about. Value, value, value. And I'm thinking to myself, if they find no value in what you're bringing in, they will not subscribe to it.
Tata, yes.
My name is Awal Tata. I will want to approach mine in two two directions. The first direction is from the academic direction, and the second direction is from my background as an Internet Society member, where we always promote Internet for societal goods. Society is made up of government and the governed. Now, each is scared of the power of the other. The governed is scared of the power of the government, and the government is also scared of the power of the governed. And there is this notion that the internet influences the behavior of human beings. And some other people are saying, no, no, no. Human beings are actually influencing the behavior of the internet. So I think this is going to be more of an academic exercise for us to now look at the constructs that make up the relationship between who changes the order among the governed and the government, so that we can now bring out a kind of theory that can help us in saying, okay, if we bring the social percentage of this construct will make us have an influence that will amount to societal bad. And social amount of the construct of these elements will make us have societal good, so that the government will know that, okay, if I need to regulate internet usage, these are the things I need to tweak, so that my populace will now be given out good as a result of their interaction with the internet. And if I need to regulate people, these are the things that I need to, like the percentage of the construct that I need to influence, so that it can now bring out the good out of the internet. So that, I mean, I don't know whether I've complicated this issue more, but I feel there's a need for our academic researchers to actually sit down and look at this, so that we bring out a concise theory that will make us get the optimal benefit of the internet, both for the government and the government. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right?
Yes. My name is Abdulfatai Adekanem. My question is a little bit similar to his. Well, my question is, everybody has a role to play on the internet. The thing is, the internet for everyone. We want to look at the value of the internet and how we can get it to everyone. So my question is, what role does academia in different communities have to play in a society where they are located by getting internet to everyone? At least in every community or society in Nigeria, we can have an institution, a tertiary institution. What role outside the four walls of their school do they play in that community to get internet to everyone? Thank you.
I think we'll have two people here, so Prof and Tommy, what role?
Okay. Sorry, before I will do his own, I just want to maybe put Tata's and something into perspective by recalling the question Commis asked earlier on, that what will happen if the internet goes down for 5 minutes? I'll tell you, in Nigeria, it will be much easier to get the government down if they shut down internet 5 minutes than attempting a revolution. Back to your question. You see, one of the challenges most of the maybe academic institutions have is whether or not they even have enough to satisfy their immediate constituency. Talk less of trying to do maybe extension service to others. So that's one of the major constraints that they have. And so that's why maybe some of the earlier discussions that took place about trying to address the affordability of internet. Because once it becomes affordable, then it can become accessible to a lot more people. But despite that challenge, And probably maybe Dole is here, Tata is here. Maybe also the Internet Society probably also needs to maybe step up and do a little bit more. We have an understanding from last year's ngNOG, and we offered our facilities for the extension of internet access to communities around the university in Zaria and its environ. And ISOC was supposed to source some funds to get certain facilities, but we offered our bandwidth and our data center to be able to do that exercise. So maybe there's a lot more that ISOC could do in maybe also getting some other academic institutions to also play a part in getting some of the unserved or underserved communities around them with internet access.
Okay, so I'll just jump in right there. There's a point that he had made earlier, which is what's the role that academia have to do? We'll go back to something that Komi said, that probably one of the problems is that we don't take data-driven decisions. Now, the academia, people who do research, I think if you try to do your research along the lines of things that actually affect people's lives, and then use the same internet to go beyond you, oh, I've checked this mark and I've got my doctorate and whatever it is, but to also share the things that you do, then people would know what's happening, and even businesses can take their own decisions and plan based on that. To get to the internet society and academic or university communities part of it, Professor Mwasu said you probably don't have enough internet capacity for your institution before you can talk about servicing the nearby community. So you look at things like community networks, and like what we're going to be doing in Zaria. I know that some equipment has arrived in Zaria for deployment of the community network. The things that we're looking at are offline content. That if the university, so if your university were looking at, okay, how can we affect the communities around us? Give you some support, set up your radio networks, but then on a local server there are beautiful things like offline versions of Khan Academy, Wikipedia, the MIT OpenCourseWare, and things like that. Now, some people need to do a little more work to localize this content. For those who can speak English, you can just simply connect to the network, and then you're getting that, browsing that offline content. But for the person who cannot speak English, somebody needs to either bridge the gap by adding content that teaches you this new language, or another group of bodies would also now look at translating this content to the local dialects, so that people then they start to see, oh, you mean I could sit down for 5 minutes, watch a video, and all of a sudden I'm an expert at fixing this or that. That's the way I've learned over the last 15 years. Make a video, because I've had that opportunity. I can speak English, and I've worked for employers who provide me internet bandwidth for free. So.
Thank you. And I think from what Prof was also saying, they're providing a data center for you to be able to host content for free. And I think that's one thing those in the academia can also tap. So Kami, do you have something?
Yeah, I just want to chip in something that Tata said. What Tata is asking for is a framework. A framework that tries to, I won't use the word control, because it brings controversy. A framework that tries to manage good behavior on the internet. Now, and that is where, one of the challenges that we have is that I don't know how well to say this, but we don't work hard enough mentally. I'm sorry to say. Now, why am I saying that? We need to craft legislation that can regulate good behavior on the internet without necessarily serving as a stumbling block to innovation and development. Now, there's a lot of talk about free speech, but everybody knows that you can't, even in developed countries, there's a limit to what you can say and term as free speech and get away with it. So the ball is now in the court of our legal experts to draft guidelines that does not infringe on people's human rights and that can still promote good behavior on the internet. To the people in government, there's a lot of paranoia in the government about the fact that, okay, if you give people too much internet, they get out of hand. There are some things that you cannot stop. And that is, one of them is the effect of internet, you know. You can't stop people from thinking. You can only limit or delay the time. So I would like to encourage governments to be proactive and think ahead of the problems that people will give them. And an example is this. It's currently controversial, but I want to encourage. So in Europe now, there's a lot of facial recognition being used for security. Of course, there's a lot of controversy on whether it's entering into people's privacy, but the implementation of that has a tendency of also reducing crime. You know, so the government can use technology to modulate public behavior, you know, also to manage and implement security.
Thank you very much. So we'll take the final question and then we'll wrap up. Right.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about the real value of the internet. A very important question is, who is capturing that value? Because if you're going to create value here that gets captured by multinationals outside of here, you're solving the wrong problem.
Sorry, take that again.
If you're going to create value here in Africa, here in Nigeria, and for the value to be captured, take for example, every single person here can create a YouTube video, but who captures the majority of the value of it on YouTube? It's not a Nigerian company. It is an American company, Google. So until we start thinking about how can we capture more and more of the value and keep it in here, we're not asking the right questions. I like the fact that we're talking about community networks, right? This model where we are persistent consumers, we consume petroleum, we consume everything, it is not going to work, because if the whole point of connecting to an IXP is just so you can access the Google cache or the Facebook cache, we've lost this game. And I think the community network is the place where we can start. Until we start wearing the hat of a creator, of a producer, someone who captures the value, right? We're going to perpetually be solving the $5 problems. Guys, let's step up. Let's look for the $5 billion problems. Let's look for the $5 trillion problems. It is the mentality of a creator, or someone who captures the value from their creations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamon, for that. So we'll take the final question from her and we'll wrap up this.
There was a lady that was raising up her hand.
She's been raising up her hand.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'd like to correct a perception. One of the panelists talked about Big Brother. And I'm talking from the point of view of somebody who worked on Big Brother. I've worked on the last 3 Big Brother. He talked about content creation and how it's not localized. I beg to differ.
you very much. All right, so please your final word so we can close this panel. Going from Prof, your final word.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just to start from where Tamong ended. And I think that's the bottom line. And that's what I was trying to allude to right from the beginning. We cannot get the real value of internet until we create that value. Thank you.
Final word.
Well, I just want to applaud again. Content is created locally. What the internationals in this room is providing right now is just a platform for that content to reach the users locally as well. And that's how it should be. But my final word is also that I think that using this popular content and the entertainment content to drive more people to want to be on the internet in the longer run can be really good for the Nigerian society, because you can then add the value of online identities and e-governance.
Thank you very much. Final word.
Well, the whole point revolve around content. But we should be careful not to look at content from the point of view of localization. So you want to localize this content. However, this type of localization doesn't mean you want to restrict it to be Nigerian content alone. For instance, the internet enables us to consume global content and international content, and you want the local content to be also consumed internationally. So when you keep pushing for the value of the local environment, you also remember that this value all goes global. And the other part of it is this, that while internet enables us to do a lot of things, it's also necessary for us to build capacity on how to provide this infrastructure, this platform that enables the local content to thrive. And my final word is this: we're already doing good, very well in the content area, especially in some areas, the music industry and the rest of it. So we are growing, and I think the future is bright.
Okay, as the use of the internet increases, there's going to be an explosion of data. What I would like to see going forward is how we can tap into that mass of data to influence the kind of decisions that we'll be taking going forward.
Rolling your final word.
My final words on this would be to follow the money. As we've learned over the last 2 days, people take decisions based on how am I going to get value from it. Mokom said it earlier as well, business value, personal value. Now, we might need to do, so there's an opportunity for somebody here to reveal the value of the internet, either being an example and enjoying the benefits, or just revealing, exposing people to the amount of information or data that's possible to do great things from.
As the moderator, my final word will also be, we all need to help improve the level of appreciation so people can make more money, people can use the internet more, and make sure that it gets to everyone. Please a round of applause to all our panelists. Thank you very much. Another round of applause to them as they go down the stage. Okay, we're coming to the end, or towards the end. Don't forget that our raffle draw for the person who is going to win the Oculus Quest I hope we all registered for this event. I hope you have, because the raffle draw will soon be done. So for those that will win to get something. I think, like I said yesterday, I'm sure I'm the one that will win this thing. I don't know about you. So we'll see what happens. All right. So we're going to be taking the next presentation, which will be on 5G and IoT. It will be done by Mr. Olusegun Oyetunji from Airtel. He's going to be talking to us about what's in it for service providers. After this, we'll take 2 more presentations, and then we'll do the draw. Very short presentations, please. Round of applause for Mr. Tunji.
Hello. Hello. Good to be here again. So let me just wait to get the pointer, and then we'll commence. It's going to be a very short presentation. In 10 minutes, we'll be done. Talking about 5G and IoT. What's in it for service providers? We've heard the panel talk about localizing content, solving the $5 billion problem. Also, from the service provider perspective, we are in a $5 issue right now. We are not gaining the $5 billion. So, we are a channel to OTT partners. Right now, we call the 4G data and OTT data because we are only giving them a pipe. If I should ask, what do you do with your phones right now? Instagram, correct? Facebook, correct? Google Maps, right? Maybe Skype, you know. YouTube, of course. How many of these are hosted by Airtel? None. MTN? None. Glow? None. Skynet? You hosting any of this? No. Because we are only a channel. So what we are giving now is connectivity. Simply put, connectivity. But what's going to happen when we get to 5G? Is there any hope? Why do we need to invest in 5G at all if all we are giving is connectivity? That means that the value chain right now is just like we are the thin side, while OTT guys are the wide side of it. So what's going to happen in 5G? That's what we want to discuss right now. So let's go. So of course, the world has been waiting for 5G, and it's supposed to come at a very fast speed. But 4G seems to have given us all the speed that we need, right? We can see YouTube without buffering or jittering for 1 hour. On your smart TV, you see that English Premiership. It doesn't buffer at all, right? So why do we need 5G at all? Do we still need 5G? Because I hear people talk around me that, do we need 5G? But then, I'll answer part of that question. So, we won't be able to play that video, but we'll move faster because the lightning talk 10 minutes, so I won't get you bored. So look at the difference between 4G and 5G. 4G promised 10 millisecond latency. 5G is coming with less than 1 millisecond. Why? Because there are many use cases waiting for 5G, like the Google driverless car. If we are on the road, you are in a driverless car, I'm in a driverless car, and you know our Nigerian way of driving now, and somebody just slams the brake. Woo! If your car doesn't respond in less than 1 second, what do you think will happen? The crush will be too much. In fact, all our cars will be, let's use the Nigerian word, right off. So that's why we need that latency. So 4G promised 1 gigabit per second, which is still yet to be achieved. That's the ideal. But 5G promised 20 gigabit per second. So you can see that they are quite some world apart. But the one I want to focus on here is the number of connection, the connection density, which is why we need 5G for IoT. We are doing IoT partially right now, but it's not able to go full scale because it's the limitation on 4G. What's the limitation? 100,000 connections per kilometer. It's the limitation of the radio. So that's why 5G is coming with what? 1 million connections per kilometer. If you think, do you think that when that was being designed, it was for us? Are we going to increase by 100,000 times in the world? Of course not. So something was in mind. That means that we're considering things that will be connected. We are going to Internet of Things, no longer Internet of me and you. Internet of Things. Very soon, all our cars will start having connectivity. Our fridge at home will have connectivity. I mean, maybe our Barbie dolls will have connectivity. Just think about it. Our gates, you want to control your gate from here. Somebody got home, he didn't inform you. Oh, you want to open the gate for him while you're here. Just get on the app, pop, and the gate is open, right? So that means that almost everything around you, we'll be talking smart home, smart everything, smart cities, what have you. So let's move on. So how do we go into this Internet of Things? And what's in it for service providers? We have a few of service providers here. So let's see. Is there a bright future? All right. Oh, this is not changing again. Technical team, can you help check this? This is not changing. Next slide, next one. Next. Okay, so look at this. So when we talk 5G, I was telling you, it's not just about connection of me and you. 5G was thought of in 3 dimensions. We have something that is called enhanced mobile broadband. That's the one that brings more speed to you if you need it. Then we have the ultra-reliable low latency connection. That's the one that talks about the example I gave you, the driverless car. Because it has to be ultra-reliable with a low latency, less than 1 millisecond. And we also have the third angle to it, which is the massive machine type connection. That's the one that comes with the IoT. Massive machine type connection. IoT, robotics, and the likes. So you could see it here, and what each one avails us to do. Okay? So, and what are the use cases around this? Next slide, please. Okay, the use cases around this, we have the media everywhere, which we have today. And of course, you could see that the smart transport, which will be driverless then. And then we have the human IoT, which we're focusing on today, and what does it bring to us? So, let's see. Now, this is how we have evolved from the start of GSM telephony to where we are going, 5G. On the first side, the feature phone, you know what we call the feature phone, the 2G, 2G plus phone that hardly does data, still very much around us today, And then we have the 3G, 4G era, the smartphone era, where we are in today in Nigeria. And what about the hyper-connection era? That is the 5G era, towards hyper-connected devices. So what is that going to bring to us? You notice it's about Internet of Things, big data. Because Internet of Things will be generating data continuously. These things we are talking about will be generating data continuously. Imagine in China today they have about 200 million cameras installed everywhere for surveillance. Now, what do you think? How much data will those cameras be generating? We're talking videos, right? Videos. Have you tried capturing a video in 10 minutes? How much of your volume did you use? Let's even put it at 10 meg. Now, can you multiply 10 meg by 200 million by 365 days? That's a very huge data, big data. But what are we going to be doing with this big data? And what's our place as service providers in the big data thing? So let's check. Where are we today? In Nigeria and other developing nations, we are still crossing. We're in the 3G, 2G, 3G, 4G band, right? We have not started the 5G. And then in advanced telco in developed countries, they have actually shut down 2G. Most of them, a good number of them. And some are even discussing, what do we need 3G for anyway? Like in Japan. But this is what the 5G brings to us. So next, so you see, in Nigeria, this is like a typical distribution of our traffic today. I was asking you what you do with your phone the other time. Facebook, Google, and all the like. So you can see that the OTT content, as we know it, the Facebook content plus Google content together makes 75% of the traffic that we do in Nigeria. So is it justified to say that we are a channel to OTT? Is it not justified? It is justified to say that, actually. Yeah? And you can see that the 3G, 4G data, with 3G, 4G, most of the service providers are just providing the connectivity for the content to be fetched. And what else? With 5G, the table is turning a bit. So let's go on. Now, look at this typical example. You're driving, you have your Google map, and your car has that, whether it has the location service or you put your phone there, stuck in there. What are you doing? You're actually accessing the Google map content directly, correct? Through maybe Airtel network, MTN network, call it, name it any kind of network. But when we get to 5G, what will be different? Look at that. You notice that that device showing me Google Map is no longer there, right? But what you are seeing in the 5G era is what is called augmented reality. So that means I may just need to put on a pair of glasses and I'll be seeing the map right in front of me. I'll just be seeing, okay, turn this way, these are cameras here, your speed limit is here. Augmented reality. But for me to have that service, there has to be a partnership between the OTT and the service provider because it has to come to the edge as much as possible and with a very, very low latency. And also that will be real time because it's augmented over your real vision. So it has to be as real as possible. And that is what will make this change. Please go back. Go back. Yeah. You notice the representation underneath it wherein in 4G we're crossing over straight like a logical connection to the OTT. But in 5G, the value chain changes. So you'd see that it has to go through the service provider before it gets to the OTT. That means the service provider is either hosting the service or hosting the, the connectivity or even facilitating that augmented reality in itself. So the value chain is changing. Next, please. So now, this is how we have moved, the computing era. We are getting to the 4.0 era right now. But what's driving the 4.0 era? What's going to power the 4.0 era? You can see the others, they're powered by internet protocol, smartphone. But in the 4.0 era, where we are going to go, the world is going smart. It's all about IoT. So it's going to be powered by IoT, basically. Next, please. Yeah, so it's powered by Internet of Things. Next slide. So this is all about Internet of Things. It comes in different shapes and different dimensions, right? So you could see that it can come in terms of health, it can come in drones, it can come in asset management, smart metering, which we are seeing today, collaborative robotics, advanced automation. But what would they all be doing? They will be generating big data, generating data continuously. But who will own this data? Who's going to own it really, when we get to that point? Now, look at it today. This is the data from Intel and how this Internet of Things are generating the data today. So you can see that in the space of manufacturing where you have the robotics generating a lot of data today, but probably when driverless car starts, that will shift to transportation. But to quickly make you understand why the service provider will be the custodian of this data. You see, if you have to give you an example, a Mercedes-Benz has a what do you call it now? A SIM card. A Toyota has a SIM card. But you want to do a service that will show, a service that will probably tell people the kind of car to buy on the Lagos road, because this brand of car moves at this speed, or this is the lifetime of this brand of car. Maybe a Toyota can sustain the potholes in Lagos road better than this and that. So that means you need to spool the data across all makes of cars. Am I right? Will a Toyota help you then? If you go to Toyota, please give me the data. You've only gotten one out of how many brands? But if you go to an Airtel or an MTN, please give me the data of all the vehicles connected to you. Wow. that means that you're actually going to the right place. So the big data is becoming the next crude oil in itself. And that's why you're hearing words about data mining, because we'll be mining the data that we'll get from service providers. Be a lot of data which we'll mine and make something good out of them. So the vast services of the future will actually be spooled from the big data from service providers. Next, please. Okay, so see how the cycle goes. So you see what makes the Internet of Things: the device connection, the analytics, the value it brings, and the human value it actually brings, the final value it brings to you. And then the communication also, to focus on the networks, and then the data sensing, wherever the sensors are. So where's the place of the service provider in all of this, in the entire cycle? So you see in cycle 1, the device connection. Of course, the service provider has to give the connection, right? Whether by SIM card or fiber or name it. Next. Also in stage 3, the service provider in the transport of the data, that means take a smart camera, for example, situated at Ojota, but the server that needs is at Abuja. Who will transport the data from Ojota to Abuja? Service provider, correct? So that's the data transport. Then, what I was saying the other time, using that Google service, if Google will do the augmented reality, probably they have to bring a server close to the head. Who will host it? Probably the service provider will have to give them a platform to host that application. That's what I mean by anything as a service, whether it will be platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, service as a service, who knows? Next. Then the 3PP and MNO can now partner in mining that data. So, as a VAS partner, you could come that, hey, Mr. Airtel, Mr. MTN, I need this much data about this. I want to mine it to create this particular service. So we partner, we do all of that. So you can see that in this cycle, the MNO has a very strong footprint, right? Am I correct? This is like the full value chain. Okay, next. And you could, let me go back one bit. Yeah, so the shared value chain. So you can see then that it's now a question of shared value chain, no longer a logical chain, no longer the thin pipe and the big funnel. It's going to be a shared value chain. So, what then is it? So this is the projection now. This is where we are looking at. 47% of the value in big data or in IoT is expected or projected to go to service providers this time. Unlike the days of OTT, who knows, maybe we are getting up to 10%. I really can't tell. And if you read this last statement, in the next 5 years, the revenue will also come from service-enabled platforms, apps, and services, refining data from their IoT platforms and turning bulk data into smart data, and will be able to create incremental value. This is talking about the service provider now, creating incremental value from the huge data that they have by refining them all the time. So what am I saying? In summary, this is the summary. Today, we're a channel. Tomorrow, we will be the source. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tu.
Anyone has a question?
Yes, I'm sure. My first question is that since the service providers will be making a lot of money, how do I become a shareholder with Airtel so I'll share from your money?
I really don't know.
All right.
Buy our shares. It's on London share.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think you went through it so fast because of time.
Because of time.
But it also got me thinking. First of all, I love your enthusiasm. It's very, very infectious. But I see a lot of interesting things in what you try to take us through. And maybe if we step back, because my people say the flame does not fall on you and burn you twice. But I see very, very interesting things in this presentation, and I am wondering, why are the operators still going in the same direction and telling us it's a different direction? First of all, 10 years ago, no operator imagined that there can be an OTT operator. Correct. 10 years ago, it is sacrilege for a Facebook or a Google to be at an internet exchange point. They are not a connectivity provider. They have no business there. Right. But you agree with me that in the last 10 years, it is quite obvious that without bringing the content to the edges, we're not really going to make progress. So we welcomed content providers as close as possible to the edges. Now, what I see in what you showed is that you are not looking at the fact that a Toyota can go into the business of providing access.
ISP.
Why? Because all cars are driving and moving on the road. Many people are stationary. So why can't a Toyota become a mobile access point? Carrying the internet directly connected to satellite, beaming down and redistributing the content. I am amazed at what gives you that optimism that 5G would benefit operators. I think operators will continue to be conduits, and what they should be looking at is to buying shares in OTT providers. I don't see in what you showed how 5G would change this game. Okay. It will only make new providers out of cars, out of hospitals who need high speed to provide telemedicine. So you have the high speed to provide telemedicine. People come into your office, they can access the internet for free. The game will change. And I wish operators the very best, mobile network operators, the very best in the game to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Based on your question now, you said a Toyota can be an access point. Absolutely, that can happen. But a Toyota cannot be a service provider, a mobile service provider. Yes, they cannot. Okay, maybe they can't. Well, okay, if Toyota will be that means a Toyota will be an Airtel, in the sense that, yes. So that means a Toyota will be a service provider as well. Exactly. So, yeah. And if they become that, then they have joined the League of Service Providers. So you are now back to my point that service provider will be the benefactors. Do you understand? Because if Toyota stays as a car manufacturer of one make, and all they're interested in is providing service to Toyota lines alone, then they'll be missing all the extra data from all the other makes. But if they become a service provider and they give access to a Mercedes, to a Volvo, then they've joined the League of Service Provider. And that means Car Access Alliance. Fantastic. Then that is one side of the big data. That's one side of the big data. What about the smart city, the cameras and all of the surveillance? Are we going to have another Surveillance Access Alliance? Maybe, right? Now, do you not know what will happen, sir? We will not have an intelligence. So what will happen is that the only intelligence Car Service Alliance will offer us will be all about mobility, transport, put aside. The only intelligence surveillance will offer us will be all about surveillance, put aside. So if I want to do a solution that will take me from everything, I'll give you an example. Somebody told me one day, came to Nigeria and told me one day that, in the US, when I wake up in the morning, his car was, I've forgotten the make of his car now. It was a 2019 brand. And he told me that at 8 o'clock, he could start his car while at home. In his bedroom to warm up, And then also that he has another app to, I think to put up his fridge and his lights. And then I asked him a question. I said, there's no intelligence in these things. So you have one app addressing your living room. You have another app addressing your car. What about the day you wake up late? That you wake up 11 p.m. Does it mean that your car would have been running since 8 a.m.? Because he said he set it to start at 8 a.m. Where's the intelligence? What about we have one unified app, that will know when you woke up, and then will inform your car startup. But on the day you sleep and probably sleep late, it will never inform your car to start up. That's the coordination we're talking about. And that's the Internet of Things. It's not just, that vertical thing. Okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Olatunji. Please, a bigger round of applause to Mr. Olatunji. Any other question for him? All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, round of applause for him. Okay, so we'll be taking our, let me not say final. This will be another session, panel session, to be moderated by Kami Adewara from OAU. Please, if you're there, come up the stage. Then we have Mr. Ayotunde Koka from Rack Center. Round of applause for him. Then Dr. Krishna Ragnath from Medallion. And then Sylvia Laperere from Google. Please come up the stage. A round of applause to them, please. A round of applause. Yes. Okay, so they'll be discussing going deeper, coordinating ongoing efforts and initiatives to increase access and impact of internet services. Sorry, the moderator.
Okay.
This is one of those strange panels where the moderator comes up last. So my apologies for that. So you're all welcome. I want to welcome our panelists. Once again, from Rack Center, Mr. Ayotunde Koka, you're welcome. Sylvie Laperere, Google, you're welcome. And then Dr. Krish. Okay, all right. All right, so you're welcome. There's a slide that's supposed to come up. I'd like to share this with you. Please take one. Fast. It's just to guide our discussions as we go along. Yes, just take one. Presenter, technical point, are we okay? All right. While they are working on that, we have before us going deeper, coordinating ongoing efforts and initiatives to increase access and impact of internet services. So before us here, we have an interesting group that will help us to see what practical ways that internet access can really be increased. And without limiting you to what we have, just to give us some focus, we just have some guide there. So we'll be talking along about 8 areas which we have. The first one is, what are the real numbers? The second is, what is the present reality that we have? And third, do we have the right mix of technologies? And we'll take it up from there. So, increase in internet access and and impact on internet services. Mr. Koka, what do you think? What are our real numbers? I'm curious because occasionally we hear information that we have 100 and how many million?
117.
So this 117, is it mobile users or people actually on the internet? You know, is it mobile subscribers or actually internet users in Nigeria?
When you talk to people, you find that there's significant numbers mobile users, right? Because that's where you have the access points. And earlier on today we looked at the split between actually 2G, okay, 3G, and 4G. Okay. Still predominantly 3G access. Okay. Okay. You will find that the 2G access is going to, will rapidly shift. I think we should just leapfrog over 3G and move straight to 4G. India has proved that that's possible. Okay. But predominantly it's mobile access. The Economist actually published about 3 years ago that for the first time in Africa, the smartphone imports or availability in Africa exceeded feature phones.
Okay.
And that trend has continued.
Okay.
And that's been driven by the fact that the predominant access point is mobile.
Thank you very much. So a slight twist. I'm going to scramble it up a bit and ask you to just give us some, what I'll call introduction to these topics. So start with the doctor. Not necessarily based on the agenda that we have, based on the topic that we have before us. What do you think are generally are things that need to be done to increase internet access and penetration?
See, if you look at the current scenario, 200 million people, and we have around 110 million as a penetration. But 80% or 70% of this penetration is between Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. Correct? So,
Sorry, are we hearing? So I think, sorry, our technical people, can you help us out? Please go on.
So what we need to really look at is going beyond these three cities, because that should be the business model. Correct? Because Lagos is not Nigeria, it's much bigger. The spread is much bigger. So how to reach those places? Can I reach there alone? It is practically an impossible task, correct? So it's a teaming effort within the providers on how we need to get into those places. Okay. So once we get there, then the balance falls in place.
Thank you very much. Sylvie, your opening thoughts?
Pardon?
Your opening thoughts on this subject, on this topic.
So I agree with Dr. Krish that we need to look beyond the big cities. I look at connectivity as a right. People have the right to be connected the same way that they have a right to electricity.
Okay.
It's a utility. And I say utility because there's a utility for the person. So I believe that connectivity should be ubiquitous, should be offered to everyone,
okay,
or everyone that wants it.
Thank you.
We need to push the boundaries.
We need to push the boundaries. Thank you very much. So I'm going to come back to you, Sylvie, and I'm going to ask you, well, maybe I'll reserve that for Mr. Coker again. There are three things that usually come to mind: coverage, adoption, and capacity. And I think people generally tend to confuse the three. I know, to what extent do we have coverage? How much of use do we have in Nigeria? And how much of capacity in terms of internet access do we have? Based on your experience in the field, in the market.
Yes, these are some answers that will be great for someone from NITA.
Okay.
I'll explain why. There's an internet coverage map of Nigeria, and you tend to find one from coverage, not necessarily from capacity, that's published from time to time. So you still have quite a lot of gaps outside of where the towns and the cities are. Okay, even that is not necessarily that accurate, right? But still, the internet penetration is still concentrated in the cities. Okay, so how much quality is good enough quality for universal internet access? It's a bit like saying you have toll roads. Everyone has a right to a road, but some of the toll roads are bigger, faster, and you pay for it. You might say mostly everyone has access to electricity, but if you want to run 6 air conditioners in your house, you're going to have to pay for it. And maybe the people paying for the 6 air conditioners that subsidize the people that have a right to just light. Okay? And, if you want to increase access, you need to have an affordable level of general access. Now, what that speed would be depends on whatever. It could be 0.5 megabits per second, or so on. What you find the telcos doing now, and listening to a presentation by the CEO of MTN, he talked about the shift from voice to data. I mean, Airtel showed, I think it's 30% of their revenues now is coming from data. So generally, there is that shift from just voice, mobile access, to data access. And also, the use of OTTs is driving access to data, but still predominantly in the cities is what they're saying.
Any thoughts on that?
See, like Shakoka said, there's a concentration of the capacity, correct? This concentration is to an extent in Lagos.
Okay.
The reason is that all the 5 cables are landing in Lagos.
Do we have figures for this capacity? Do you have some figures for this capacity?
No, see, if 5 cables are landing, then we can estimate what is the total capacity available in the shores of Lagos. But the problem is different here. We can say maybe 50 terabyte of bandwidth is available in Lagos.
Okay.
But what is the capacity, a local capacity available between Lagos and Port Harcourt or Lagos and Abuja? Is it available?
Correct.
If so, at what cost?
Okay.
Because the cost of Lagos to London, for example, 1 meg, the cost is $5. But if I need to have a Lagos to Abuja 1 meg, that is $50.
You don't mean it?
So, I mean it exactly because when we look at, the tariffs in different locations, we can analyze this.
Yeah.
So, that cost we need to really look at it because the local capacity is the problem, not international capacity.
Correct.
So, if any, for example, okay, these 5 cables are landing in Lagos. This can be resolved in a different way if any cable lands in Port Harcourt, for example. So, the traffic can exit from Port Harcourt to London or wherever it is. So that makes a bit more, the network can become a bit more smoother and, it can move forward rather than everything concentrating, getting into Lagos.
Sorry, I'm going to take you up on that. You've given us figures that it actually costs more to move from Lagos to Abuja than all the way from maybe Europe to Lagos. And what are strategies that you think we need to be put in place to reduce that cost?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say who. However, I can say that there are some carriers now that are seeing a significant fall in those prices.
That's from coast to hinterland.
For coast to hinterland, Lagos to Abuja prices are coming down significantly. Just like happened with the undersea cable transit prices. The same is now starting to happen with broadband costs from Lagos out Abuja, Port Harcourt. They're crashing. If you speak to many of the telcos, it's they're really having to relook at their business model because they're being disrupted by also new entrants into the market.
Okay, thank you very much. I want us to look at internet access consumption, and that's item 4 now, and talk about issues revolving around regulation, competition, access to smart devices. You've mentioned the fact that the cost of smart devices is coming down. Number of smart devices produced seems to even be more than regular devices. Relevant content, scale and reliability of infrastructure, and affordability. There's this story going around that maybe the cost of internet in Nigeria is not even the most expensive. It's actually coming down. What do you have to say to that, Mr. Coker?
If you look at costs of internet here in Nigeria compared to the cost in UK, right, from numbers I've seen so recently, the cost here is significantly lower. Significantly lower. It's about 20%.
So why are people saying internet is expensive?
Affordability is another issue.
Correct.
Okay? Now, when I was CIO of a bank, I would speak to carriers. We had banks connected way in the northeast, in the middle of nowhere, by fiber. So how did I achieve that? I said to the fiber providers, look, if you give me access at the far end of the country, I'll give you the juicy business in the big cities, right? And you make sure that the SLAs are negotiated to drive the right behaviors. And they'll put the fiber in place to get to that end point so they can get it really, and you make it lucrative for them to connect you in the big cities. The same thing could be done, with internet access, for instance. If you're going to be able to get in a licensing framework, if you're going to be able to get the very lucrative, high volume deals over here, democratize internet access at an affordable level, because you're having to provide data, and there's a switch from data to voice to data anyway.
I'm going to have to pause you there so that I can ask. So you're going to talk a little bit about that, then you're going to touch on regulation. What role do you think regulation can play in enhancing internet access? You were here in the morning when issues about the NCC government was brought up. From your own experience, working with rents and so on, what do you think could be a good model that Nigeria could adopt in moving internet adoption and use forward?
So I cannot advise the Nigerian NCC on anything. I think they have the answers. What I've seen working in other geography is I compare it to, if you want to have a plant that grows.
Plant?
Right, a plant. Do you pull on the plant? No. You provided sun, you provided water, you provided good soil. And that's what, in my view, regulation does. Regulation should provide sun, water, and good soil for the plant to flourish on its own.
Okay.
Nobody should tug on the plant.
What about when
it's not going to grow faster?
If the plant is growing in the wrong direction, what do you do?
Exactly. So there is definitely a role for a regulatory body to direct and guide those conditions and not make it difficult for the plant to grow.
Okay.
And plants should grow freely.
Okay.
And we should have really affordable services. And I think they pointed to that. Cheap services doesn't mean affordable services.
Okay.
There is a very good study that you can look. It's published by The Economist, and it's on the affordability. It's called the Inclusive Internet.
Okay.
Look it up. It compares the 200 countries in the world, and it gives different measures and metrics on affordability, on accessibility, and the key factor to me is what's the percentage of the disposable income of a user goes to telecommunication services or goes to a phone.
Okay.
If you look at the countries where there is a 95% adoption, it's less than 1%
disposable?
of your disposable income.
Okay.
So it doesn't register.
Okay.
So when you compare to geographies that have 10%, 15%, that's way too much.
Okay.
You should pay 10, 15% on food.
Not on internet
right?
access.
Not on internet. Exactly. So there's definitely a message there for...
Hey, want to say something? Dr. Mishra?
On the regulator side, the regulators are always there. But the question goes in a different way for me. How accessible the regulators are, number one. And how guided the regulators are. Correct. These are the two things we need to address. For example, when we are talking about rural internet, rural telephony, all those things comes a push from the government as well as the regulator. And there is a USPF fund, if I am correct.
Okay.
And if you need to access that fund, how easy that is for any of the operators.
Okay.
These are the questions we need to address it as a team.
Okay.
But to get into that level is a bit difficult. People get frustrated, let it be Nigeria or any other country. This is the fact.
Okay.
Correct. So we need to overcome that. So if you need to overcome that, what happens is the private players has to push it in much different ways, means out of the box approach. So then it goes out.
You want to say something about competition among the players?
See, healthy competition is always good.
Okay.
Okay. So there has to be a drive in the business.
Sorry,
correct?
I don't know whether if you were here when the issue of lack of cooperation among the providers was raised. What do you think? How do you think that affects the delivery of internet access to the end user?
See, the lack of cooperation is evident because we don't have that common vision.
Okay.
So everybody is having their own independent visions to achieve a particular goal.
Okay.
But instead of everybody going in separate directions, if you all sit together, the industry sits together.
But we
and
can't
drive
sit
it.
we are not able to sit together at times.
Well,
no, please, I'll get back to you, but let it
No,
finish.
we need to make that happen. If you don't make it happen, there's no growth.
Okay.
Because that shared infrastructure has to come in place.
Okay.
Because otherwise what happens is, if, for example, we can take two operators, get to each other's network, and practically they are going to cut it off. Correct? And then they put the blame onto some communal issues. But that is not the fact. So, even the regulator perspective has to come onto that, to have that common goal or a common vision for the country.
All right. All right. Yes, Silva, you wanted to say something?
So I have been in this community, what I call the internet community, since 1995.
It's in 5.
Yes, 1-5. It is a marvelous community of helpful people. You have in the room here, and I think Sunday alluded to it earlier today, the solution is here. And you find people here that will move companies, move organization, but we have these bonds, and we're motivated by the greater good. Like, the internet must work at all costs. It's got to work. It cannot stop. It cannot be partitioned. It cannot be fragmented. It's just a whole. And I feel that we all have a responsibility to play together and make it work. We all have different business plans, and we should respect our respective business plans.
Okay.
There's room for everyone.
All right.
And we can all contribute to this ecosystem
Okay.
because it is an ecosystem, and
Okay.
the definition of an ecosystem is that we're codependent.
All right.
We depend on each other. So not just one can thrive,
Okay.
everyone should pull everybody up. And that's how we will make affordable services, ubiquitous access to everyone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coker, you wanted to say something about that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about Sylvia's great analogy about the watering the plant and so on. And competition is competition. It's good. Where it plays out well, you get competition. But sometimes you need a regulatory framework that is put in place to drive the right behaviors.
Correct.
Right? And the Vice President here was talking about an approach with regulators in different fields, not just communications and the internet. It's the same thing with power and so on. Now, how do you create the KPIs?
APIs.
The KPIs for the regulators that drives them to achieve end goals, okay, that are universal, grow the market, and help achieve what you really want to achieve. So if those regulatory KPIs are set correctly, they will then put things in place that will drive the right behaviors with all of the ISP, the entire ecosystem for delivery of internet services. There's another aspect, also universal. Does universal mean perpetual? Right? Because you may find that you deliver, we've got 700 and something local government areas. Each one has a post office.
Yeah.
Post offices are now looking to say, okay, can they have, some sort of internet coverage around where they are? So, when you're in the vicinity of somewhere like that, you can get free internet. But when you're gone, you don't. Or that's the one you pay for. And people can regulate their lives by getting, much more access to internet, but doesn't necessarily mean that that kind of access is perpetual.
So we're going to pause here and take a few questions from the audience. Questions surrounding what we've been discussing so far. Anybody has? Yes, Tata?
Good evening, all. My question has more to do with providing access in underserved rightly said, you said our concentration really should be on trying to provide access to such places that are underserved, because that is the only way, or one of the best ways to achieve connecting the next 1 billion. Mine has to do now with what is the role of multinational organizations like yours, Google, in creation of things like community network in underserved areas? Because as it looks, telcos do not see providing community networks as a way to go, because of course they are profit-making ventures, and community network will not be able to provide that kind of profit that they are looking at, and that underscores the need for multinationals and government agencies to come into play in enacting or creating community networks. I know Internet Society have been doing a lot in that particular direction, but I want to see more of community networks being created, not just by Internet Society, but also by multinationals like Google and Netflix and what have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tava. I think the role of an enterprise like ours is to provide platforms, tools for these communities to emerge.
Okay.
I don't believe it's our role to substitute ourselves to local communities. What we should be doing is provide tool sets, digital skills, access to services so that these communities can flourish at a very affordable cost or no cost at all. But I believe that a community is successful when it starts from the community, not when it's imposed on itself.
Yeah, because it should emerge from the community.
It should emerge from the community, so that way it thrives.
Ownership can be
Yes.
owned by the community.
Does that answer your question?
Okay. Has that answered your question? You wanted to know? Okay. You want to ask something in the new? Please, quickly.
Specifically, Internet Society is creating a community network, a pilot community network in a rural community in northern Nigeria, Zaria to be precise. And what you have said, based on that, I am extending our hand of partnership with you, because we are already at the verge of trying to engage the communities, do something like a roadshow to show them the importance of what we are trying to implement there, and when I hand over ownership to that particular community, once we hand over ownership to that community, then I think it will be your turn to now come and add value to what we will implement in that particular aspect, and I'm sending the hands of partnership.
So I will use another analogy. I think what we are is we're a toolbox.
Toolbox.
Right? Here's a toolbox, and in it there are many tools. You are the craftsman. You build whatever you need with that toolbox. It's only your imagination is the limit of what you can do with the toolbox. But I don't believe I should build a house for you, because maybe it's not a house that you need. Maybe it's a boathouse. Maybe it's something completely different. I don't know. But I can provide you tools so that your imagination and creation can deliver on your vision. Because I think that every community will have a specific vision, and we can provide tools to do that, but we should not try to impose a vision.
Okay, so Tata, you have a blank slate there, a blank check. You just need to know what to write on it. Thank you. Any other question? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adebayo Ayodele. Still on the
rural-urban drift. The internet for everyone, there's the need for more community access to the internet because, as identified, the cities have the enough access to it. But we have more of the rural communities in this part of the world than cities. Someone like me, when I chose to toe the line of the internet, I had to leave Far-Adó-Ekiti to settle in Lagos. I would have loved to access the internet anywhere in Nigeria. But because the cities have enough facilities, programs of this kind that would help to make you grow, you discover that those who knows their way will find themselves in the cities, and they will have to be tied in the cities, where you have the Ubers of this world, the Netflix, the Google, and what have you. But what can government do? I'm throwing this to Mr. Coker. What can government do to help build more community networks across the rural, because the rural-urban drift is a serious matter that government needs to look at. But when we have the internet in place, you will discover that even more people will stay in those rural areas, access the world, and also do agriculture.
I agree with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. What can government do? The great thing about democracy is that if you have a governor that doesn't deliver stuff like that, don't vote for them to come back in. Really, I mean, if it's clear what the impact of the internet has on the community and commerce, it's actually possible for you to create industries where you don't have to deliver at that point in time. You could be delivering, maybe coding or whatever else, content and so on, to other parts of the world. Even business process management. Actually, interestingly, in some of the states where the governors are much more commercially minded, you now have business process outsourcing companies flourishing, right? And Nigeria is actually starting to create a very strong reputation on call centers and business process outsourcing. Why? One is proficiency in English language, right? A clearer accent. Two, actually, despite what you might hear about the impression of sort of Nigeria and so on, if you speak to people who outsource to Nigeria, you find that the sanctity of contracts here and trust is actually quite very, very good. Okay? So if you have those possibilities with what the internet can bring into the communities, building the communities and so on, then it's down to the governors, not federal. It's down to the governors to really create the right environment to motivate telco companies, ISPs, to establish in their states. If I was I'm not a politician, but if you were a governor, wouldn't you pay, forget right of way, just give free right of way, will incentivize you to lay all of the fiber you need. Okay? Deliver the internet to the people, drive commerce, just make it easier for people to come in. And then, so if you don't like it, vote out the governors. That's where the action really happens.
Mr. Coker, on right of way, there's this suggestion that right of way should actually be totally abolished. And the model that is being suggested is where government would just put the pipes in the trench, and that way nobody has to ever dig and ask for right of way. What do you think about that?
Actually, it's now standard road building design in the country here, that if there's a new road, you have the right ducting for fiber. So it's standard. That's what was put in place by the Mombola Johnson a few years ago. That's one of the key achievements then.
But is it being implemented?
It is, yeah. If you build a road, a new proper road, then you have ducting. Look at Bodilon. Even that, you've got the actual right ducting. Look at some of the new roads in Lekki, for instance. They do have the right ducting for broadband cable routing.
So one of the question. And after that question, we'll just look briefly at, are we looking at the right technology mix? Because one question that has come is, how are we serving those at the rural areas that don't have internet access? And just before you ask your question, I know that Google had this pilot program for Google Loon, which was targeted towards the underserved locations. And perhaps Medallion and Rack Center can throw in their thoughts on that, on what kind of technologies should Nigeria be using to bring those underserved into the mix? Your question?
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Ike Michael. We can't talk about rural-urban drift without actually looking key at the transport sector. We're pioneering a project which is actually targeted through urbanizing the transport sector. That is making them go online. And one of the problems we've been encountering, it's not basically the internet, but as an RF person, I know the coverage of MTN all over Nigeria. It's 3G. 3G, then a little bit of 4G. They have a very good coverage. I think from what that lady said is dispensable income. Affordability of the device itself. We had to call a local manufacturer to come in with phones, Partner Mobile. And after giving all the tricycles, about 400 phones, 500 phones, that's tricycles operators. Some of them ran away with the phone. So it's a big problem. It's that income. Apart from, because we now started changing the features, because I had to now disguise myself as an operator, tricycle operator, started looking at what is the problem. Until I started knowing that they want a tool that will help them make money. We now introduced e-hailing into the app. We introduced Circle of 5 so that they can communicate properly in Hausa. I'm talking about the Abuja launch, because we launched already in Abuja. But I feel the hardware itself for accessing, if it's mobile itself, has to be very affordable, because we had to bring in a local partner and they couldn't pay once. The ones who paid over 3 months, they ran away with it. So if they have to use the internet for everyday rural-urban drive, the device in which they use to access it should be as cheap as possible for them to be able to pay for it. So that's my own contribution.
Sorry, how much were some of these devices you distributed? Because we heard that
Partner Mobile was selling theirs for, I think, 17,000, and they had to pay over 3 months.
Okay.
And these people make, in Abuja, it's not as lucrative as Lagos. I think they make about 20-something thousand weekly, but most of them are on higher purchase. They barely don't have 4,000 to themselves at the end of the week.
All right. I think we need to start rounding up. Finally, from each of our panelists, let's look at what are the real challenges that we're looking at in your final thoughts. Maybe talk about one thing that you think, if removed, will help us to leapfrog and make serious impact in internet access in the country. Let's start with you, Dr. Krishna.
See, the biggest thing we need to look at is the intercity connectivity part.
Sorry?
The intercity connectivity part. Okay, and the other, we have more than enough capacity in Lagos. So how we are going to transport this maybe to Kanu or other remote states?
Okay.
Okay. If you, in the current scenario when we travel, the state capital has a decent 3G coverage to an extent, but if you move out from there, you can't even browse anything, you can't even open anything. So these are the fundamental things we need to address actually. So that infrastructure has to grow. But a country like Nigeria or any growing economy, this is a part, and it won't come tomorrow morning. It is, you have to wait, you have to put that effort for a period of time till it reaches that particular state. So it's a process. So we need to run through the process in the right way. So we get these obstacles out and get the access to the people. But when internet reaches the nook and corner of the country, the knowledge level increases, the productivity level increases, education increases, everything goes up.
Correct.
The current spectrum, when we are saying that 80% of Nigerians are below poverty, that spectrum changes.
Correct.
And the middle class comes in place.
Correct.
So middle class is always the backbone of
Yeah.
any country.
Yeah.
So we need to look at that angle.
Yeah.
So the fundamental is that get the basic connectivity done in the right way.
All right. Thank you very much. Sylvia? One thing that you think, if done, will make tremendous impact.
So if you have this aspirational goal that every citizen of the country should have access to the internet, you also need good conditions for this to happen. And I will give you one example. I come from Canada, a country of 35 million, 1/3 of the population here. No, actually 1/6. And we are probably 15 times bigger in coverage, in landmass. It's only when our government decided that every user should have access that things started to move in the right direction. And people started thinking, do we build different roads? Or do we share the same road? Do we build multiple sewage system, or do we use the same one? And then this notion of sharing infrastructure came into play.
Okay.
Because infrastructure is costly. So you can build a part of it, and then you should offer the rest equally to other players so that they don't need to spend money to build the same road.
Correct.
And then you can build a model this way, and this is how you wire faster big geographies. So, room for thought.
Thank you very much. Mr. Koka?
So more collaboration.
It's about collaboration.
Maybe it's in our DNA to build things over. You know, we all buy our generators, we all build our boreholes.
Correct.
You know, and we need to we need to move away from that to have utilities. You know, and somehow have the kind of conditions that drive the right behavior for us to have a utility approach to providing internet access, at least to a level of access that is agreed, that is pretty much more universal, right? And somehow, in the framework of however we to regulate or incentives we give to the different layers of government to drive the behaviors that, you know, take the barriers away to general access.
Who does that? Who creates those behavioral shaping structures?
Okay. Well, I mean, it partly could be, one regulatory framework. You find in the payment systems, for instance, they try to drive some behaviors by putting some key things in place. Might sound painful at first, cashless, for instance, but then it drives different behaviors. I think at a certain level of federal, or primarily actually, it's incentivizing the states because they're much more local. They understand the local constraints, right? And they understand exactly what the local needs are, you know.
I asked that question even though it may seem obvious that the majority of that work should be done by the regulators, but still, where there's a gap, you know, somebody still needs to work together.
There has to be collaboration.
Collaboration. Yes. All right, I want to thank all our panelists. We're not going to take any other question because of time. I want to thank all our panelists for their contributions and all. Please a round of applause for our panelists and for all of us. We have come to the end of this session, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Give the golden handshake.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, another round of applause to them, please. Okay, so just a bit of information. There will be a social event at the end of this, just to say thank you to those who have remained here. I'm sure you're also looking at me for the Oculus. It's only those that are here that will participate in that. So even if you win and you're not here, you can collect. So it's only those that are here. So you're sure that at least for staying this far, then you have to get something. Okay, finally, somebody brought us here. So it's time for us to appreciate our sponsors, to say thank you to them, to say Dalu, to say Nagode, to say, what's the word in Yoruba? To say Adukwe. Without them, I mean, keeping us here for 2 days, giving you all the food, keeping you in a very conducive environment. And then, so we need to say thank you to them. And to do that, we will be inviting our co-convener, Mr. or Reverend SF, to be presenting that. Rashida, please come up the stage. And then Mr. Dewole Ajao, say thank you to them and present some gifts to them. And then Mr. Dr. Wale Adedoku. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.